Hi, my name is Monica, and I'm the host of In Her Words podcast, and I'm back again today with my friend Shannon. Thank you so much for being a part of this. And we were talking in the last episode just about our life together, all the things that we've been through together, because we have known each other for 50 years, so we've walked through a lot of life together. One of the things that we were talking about is just how incredible, and not incredible in a good way, but incredible it is that she didn't even know that all those years from the age of 11 until 19, really, for the most part, that I was being sexually abused. First by my stepdad, and then when I moved into the pastor's home. And even though we did life together, we spent a lot of time together, our families, you never knew.
Never.
Right.
Mm-mm.
And that's really sad. And it's sad because when you tell someone of the abuse that you've been through, it's hard. It's hard to do. And it was hard for me to meet with you guys last year and share with you what I've gone through, because it's like, what? I never knew. And to tell them, and I remember you started to cry. And you crying made me cry because I was sad that I made you sad by telling you what, I'm saying?
Yeah, and you're feeling guilty for me. And I'm like, no, it's not about me.
But it made me feel what you were feeling. And sometimes I tell these things so factual, it may seem like it's emotionless, but I'm just now starting to come out with a story, and I'm trying to explain to the audience what this can look like, what abuse may look like, and, to keep out for your friends and your family. But sometimes you'll never know.
No.
You'll never know. And I did a devotion this morning before I came here, and I thought it was so good, and I wanted to read it to you. So bear with me as I read on my phone, but you can find this on the Bible app, and I can go back and see what this is called. It's called Born to Bloom. So this is one of the reading plans on the Bible app. So I'm going to read this to you because I thought it was amazing, and I think it's something that needs to be talked about. So it's called Choose to Heal. Today is a new day. As you arise, you get to make choices about this day. Will you choose to heal, or will you walk in your pain? And that kind of caught my attention. Like, will you choose to heal, or will you walk in your pain? The choice is yours. As Jesus was walking the earth healing people, he never forced healing upon anyone. He would ask, do you want to be well? And that's my question to you today. Whatever the abuse may be, whatever the hurt may be, maybe it's physical, mental, emotional, whatever it is, the question really is, do you want to be well? And that's only a decision that you can make. God can't do that for you. And what were we talking about a few minutes ago when you were talking about that?
He said he wants you to ask. He wants
Right.
you to tell him what you need. He knows all things, but you're the one that has to ask for it, for him to give it.
Right. So he knew I was being abused. And, in the end, I did cry out for help. And I'll always believe that he rescued me. Mm-hmm. But even past that, walk into the other years and then the other decades of my life, I've had to come to the place where I have to ask for help, and sometimes just talking to somebody that you trust, and you need to talk to somebody that you feel like you definitely can trust. Because it's one thing to get together with your girlfriends, right? And to talk about maybe abuse that you've been through. And that's okay. I mean, we need to talk to somebody. But sometimes it can just end up being, I don't want to say a gossip session, but it can just be just talking about the pain, but not dealing with the pain.
Right.
So it starts with talking about it, of course, but that's where counseling came in for me. And that was later on down the road when I got married. It was in 1995, and I think it was year 15 of that marriage, I finally started counseling. And I went through counseling for 9 years. So I've been through counseling for over a decade. But I thought that was a really good thing to think about and to consider. Do you want to be well? Because you deserve to be well. And God is right there, and he's ready to heal you. And all you have to do is cry out to him and say that you need help. And then you may need to take it a step further. Talk to your family and friends. Go seek professional help. Find somebody you can trust. And this says here too that God desires to heal you. He simply only needs your willingness to let go and to surrender and to allow restoration to happen. When you choose to heal, it means, first of all, you face the truth. That's huge. You face the truth. Facing the truth of what happened is a very courageous step. It has to start there. You have to face what happened to you. So for me right now, and specifically what I'm talking about, is the abuse. And my story is abuse of the pastor. We're getting through that. We'll be through it soon, and there are other things to talk about. But since we're still there, you need to think about this. And I had to think about this. Like, you have to face the truth, right? And
The truth sets you free.
it's only the truth that sets you free. And I know what it feels like to be a victim of abuse and just to shut down. And I think that's really what I did in my life. A lot of my life, I just shut everything down. And I got through the day and did what I could do, and I got up and did it again. But you have got to deal with these issues in your life. And if you're watching this show and you have been abused by somebody, or maybe by this pastor that I'm talking about, and maybe you're another victim, because I'm going to tell you what happened when I walked in here today. I got another message
one.
from another victim. Another one. I got one yesterday. I don't know how many I've had. I have so many women reaching out to me telling me that this particular pastor who abused me also abused them. And a lot of them have not come forth. But since hearing my testimony, because I spoke it, and I'm talking about it, and I'm dealing with it, right along with you, we're able to expose it, right? So we have to talk about these things. Many people walk in denial throughout their life, postponing the healing that is available in truth and awareness. So the longer you postpone, and these victims don't talk about it, and I know it's kind of like self-preservation, and it's scary, and all of those things, keeping that sin hidden is only going to prolong their healing, right?
Yep.
And it's amazing to me because I was so naive. I really believed I was the only victim. And only because I lived there. So I thought that was convenient. Of course, that could happen in that type of setting. But now that I'm hearing all these stories, this story is much bigger than me. And I want to talk to all of you victims out there, whether it's this pastor or someone else who harmed you. Facing the truth is about discovering how you were impacted. That's huge. The clearer you become about the truth and the impact, the more you can transform the wound into a healing. The second thing is change and heal. Are you willing to change the way you think and deal with things? And that's huge with trauma, because a lot of times you want to push it, like I said, to the side and not deal with it. It feels so much easier to bury it, and it's not. Are you ready to heal? That's the question for you today. Do you want to be healed? To do so means you will think different and act different. You will visualize and imagine your life differently. You will make the necessary plans and take the action steps to accomplish the healing you desire. So another step here, I'm trying to read through so we don't have to read every word, but plan for success. Decide right now exactly when you will read God's word, pray, speak godly affirmations over yourself, and visualize your success. So it's important how you're talking to yourself. Because back then, I think when I was burying it, I didn't even think that I deserved anything. You know, because when you go through that, you lose so much of your self-worth. Yeah. There's so much hurt and shame that you just want to kind of brush it off. But you're going to pay for it. In one way or the other, you will pay the price for what that person did to you until you first go to God. And one of the first things I've had to do is forgive.
Yeah.
And people think, forgive? You should never forgive when someone does something horrible to you or your family. But as long as you have unforgiveness towards that person, it's like a string attached to them. Everywhere you go, there they are. That's what unforgiveness does. But when you forgive, and it's just a choice, and sometimes you have to make it over and over and over, and a memory comes up and a feeling comes up, or you see them, you choose to forgive again, and what that does is it releases that chain. You're chained to them.
Pretty soon you won't even have to forgive anymore, because you'll realize,
Yeah.
I don't even feel that way anymore.
Right.
Like, wow, God has really healed that part of me.
And that's a huge part of healing is forgiveness. So it's for yourself. And plus the Bible, as a believer, tells us we must forgive. I mean, who are we to go to God and ask God for our forgiveness? Because the Lord knows I've needed a lot of forgiveness, and I still do, and I always will. We will never arrive. There's no such thing as a perfect Christian. And there's no such thing as a perfect church. We can talk about that too, right?
Because we're there.
Yeah, because you know what the church is? My husband told me this yesterday. I said the reason why the biggest burden of me coming forward with what happened to me was thinking how I was going to tear apart the church. Like, so many people are going to be impacted and people weren't going to serve the Lord. He goes, Monica, we are the church, right? We are the church. Sure, we need to go to a building and be with other believers and have relationships and be in that setting, absolutely, but we are the church. Okay, let me read a little bit more. Be held accountable. Do you have a safe friend or coach that will gently hold you accountable? It's important to create a healthy inner circle. So I just wanted to mention that. And you know, in the Bible, and I had this pulled up earlier, is when Jesus went to that man who had been sitting there for 30 years by that pool, he saw him lying there, and he knew that he'd been there for a long time. And what did he ask that man?
What do you want?
Do you want to be well? Do you want to be well? So it's important to understand that we have to go to God and say, God, I don't want to carry this anymore. What do I do with what happened to me? For me, I felt like God told me last year, it's time for you to share your testimony. And I never, ever felt that before. Ever did I ever think. So then I knew what I needed to do, right? I sat with a multitude of counselors, like the Bible says, a psychologist, a pastor, another psychologist, actually a psychiatrist, and then my family and my close friends to say, this is what happened to me. And I feel like God is saying I need to release it, let it go, and trust God with my testimony and come forward and tell people what I've been through. Not to sit around and to lick my wounds and this to be a negative podcast, no. So you can hear what I've been through and understand that my life is a miracle. That's the bottom line. I mean, you've seen me walk through life, right?
Yeah.
And you've seen some of the things I've had to go through, even in the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And we can still say, like you and like you, our lives are miracles. But for me specifically, for the amount of trauma that I've walked through, my life is a miracle. And I hope that my story brings you hope. And I wanted you to realize that important part again, to being set free and to healing from what happened to you is admitting it and talking to the right people. You don't want to just talk to any and everybody. You want to use wisdom with that. And even for me sharing this, everyone will notice I haven't talked about a pastor's name, the name of the church, and there are several reasons for that. But it's not my whole story.
Right.
This has been a big part of my story so far, I know, and it's taken a while to get through it. But there are other parts to my story, and she's been a part of it as well. And I'll be talking about that in the next episodes, like my first marriage, where I was married for 24 years, together with this person for 25, and ended up in divorce, which is something, I just hate that word. You know, and we know God hates divorce, but God hates the sin of like what happens through divorce, right?
Yeah.
And I want to talk with you about being in a toxic marriage, even as a Christian. So we'll be talking about that in next episodes. But I wanted to get back and talk about our lives together. I just wanted to encourage them for a minute and talk about, right? Jesus wants us to go to him and say, I have a problem. I need healing. And humble ourselves. And then also forgive those who've harmed us. It sounds easy, but it's not, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, you've prayed for a lot of people in your life, a lot of, right? I mean, I've heard you pray. She's a prayer warrior. She's like her mom.
Well,
She is. And so is her sister. And they're amazing. And we wanted to talk about our moms a little bit. Because as we talked about, our moms were BFFs. They were warriors for God. They prayed for all kinds of people. And a lot of people found freedom through them, through God, but using them in their ministry. And it's interesting that now we sit here, and in the last, how long has it been for your mom since she was diagnosed?
in 2020. We started getting her to doctors to find out. But 2021 had an actual diagnosis.
So Shannon's mom and my mom, who did ministry together for many years.
They were the type of people, if you needed to know what Bible verse it was, you call them and they would know it. Like, this is where it is in the scripture. What do you want?
Yes.
I want a verse about gratitude. They would know. They were like a dictionary for
And
the
I
Bible.
remember waking up in the morning and seeing my mom on the couch always reading the Bible.
My mom too. Come in from going out at
And they're
night
just
and
reading.
she'd be reading the Bible.
So they were prayer warriors. And for all the mistakes that my mom made, she also did a lot of really great things, a lot of wonderful things. And what she put into my life about faith is really what's carried me through. And even though my mom and I have had hurt in our relationship because of some of her choices, there's also been healing. So you can have both. Like, I can talk about the bad choices my mom made, but we can also talk about the good too. And my mom did a lot of things right. Right? And that's like us, even as parents now. We do a lot of things right, we do a lot of things wrong.
They led us to the Lord.
They led us to the Lord.
And that's
everything.
Yeah, that's their
everything.
legacy. Yeah.
So my mom started showing symptoms of dementia, I guess, a few years ago. And I remember throwing her a birthday party when, well, not a few years ago, it was years ago, when she turned 70. And I remember doing it, and you guys came. I don't know if you were there, but your mom was there, and Sherry was there. Well, either or. So you guys were there.
Yeah.
And I threw it for her because I felt like she was losing her memory so much that the next year she probably wouldn't be able to remember everybody. That was 9 years ago. So my mom has been dealing with dementia for 9 years. And now she's in the end stage. And as we're speaking, she's in the hospital getting ready to have a procedure, and it has been awful. And then here, your mom
Gets diagnosed with frontal temporal dementia. It's in the umbrella dementia, like your mom. The Alzheimer's is front part of the brain to the back.
Okay.
Or is that my mom? I don't know, something like that, where it's reversed.
Yeah, it's different.
So it's totally different. Like your mom can, well, back then could carry a conversation,
Right.
or my mom can't. So, but you're like these two powerhouses.
Yeah, it's so hard to believe that they're both dealing with the same disease at the same time. It's different types of symptoms because it's affecting the brain differently.
Right.
But still.
Right.
But sometimes they'll surprise you, right? Because your mom can still pray in the Spirit.
Yeah. She can't carry a conversation.
Right.
But if you ask her to pray in the Spirit,
She can pray in the Spirit.
and that is where you know that's who you truly are.
Yeah.
Because the spirit man is not affected by disease, age, and it stays the same.
Right.
It does not. The disease cannot touch the
That
spirit.
Yeah.
It can't touch where God is. It can't.
It's amazing.
And she'll open the Bible and you tell her read. She'll read it verbatim. She may not understand what she's reading,
But she can
but when you
read it.
close your eyes, you're like, "That's my mom. There she is."
Yeah. I
And
remember
you're
your
like-
sister saying she goes over there and says she wants to hear her read because it reminds her. But then the day to day, she can't really communicate, right?
But there would be times, probably a couple years ago, she would, Joyce, I got to see her. I got to see her.
Yes. And she knew something was
She
wrong.
knew something was wrong. She'd pick up when things were going
Yes.
sideways with your mom.
Yeah.
Just more like she wouldn't be able to verbalize, but she would always say her mom's name, and I have got to do it. I got to do it, which
Yes.
meant she needs
wants
to get
to
to
see
her.
her.
Yeah. So it's just still in tune,
It's
but it's that
crazy.
spirit man. That's what it is.
And I know my younger sister's been dealing with it a lot lately. I mean, heavy stuff. And she lost a bunch of weight. And a few weeks ago, my mom was very near death. And we didn't know. You know, I was calling you to pray. It was very upsetting. And we're going to the funeral home and making plans for her funeral. I mean, we had hours, we were told. And all these things happened. I won't go into it, but we put her in the hospital. And it's almost like she was unconscious, like she was not there at all for that week at all. And my sister was having a really tough day the other day. And I went to see her the day before, my mom, and my mom was just saying things you couldn't understand. I mean, you didn't know what she was saying, you know. And I know they have good moments and then not good moments, but I mean, it's been like ever since that happened to her, she almost died, we've seen a huge change in her. She's much worse. But my sister went the other day, and she was having a hard time. And my mom said to her, "Angie, you've lost weight. What's going on?" And Angela was just like, "Oh my gosh." And then she looked at her face and she said, "I see strength." Yeah, and Angela was just like bawling because she's like, my mom is still there. Like that spirit, like she's in touch with God still.
Even though they can't say what they want or what they feel or have a conversation, God's speaking to them all the time.
All the time.
All the time. All the time.
And it's just bizarre, though, that they're going through this at the same time.
Yes.
And we so much, now that I have come out with what happened to me, we just wish, right? We could sit down with our moms and go back to those years where they served at that church. They were very dedicated prayer warriors at that church where this was happening to me. And that's one of the things he was very concerned about. The pastor was worried that our mothers, because they had the gift of prophecy, would pick up on it. And that was a huge thing, that take it to your grave, take your grave. You can't tell it. And I think about now, I would love to sit down with our moms and say, did you ever pick up on anything?
Right.
Because I've had to ask a few people. I've even asked you, and I asked a couple other people, what was I like during those years? Like, because I'm trying to think, no one noticed, no one knew. And you're like, I mean, pretty goofy and fun-loving, right? I mean, just...
No, you never, always happy.
Yeah.
Carried yourself that way. Always wanted to laugh and joke and have fun. And
Yeah, because I would push that to the side and be able to do that. But anyway, we wish that we could talk to our moms right now, because we would love, right?
oh man,
Just to ask anything and everything about those years, because I just wonder if they ever did pick up on anything. I don't think my mom did. I really don't think so. I think she would be very shocked. But your mom may have, because you guys ended up leaving that church, right?
we did. Yep.
So you ended up leaving probably a few years after that was happening to me, and you started going to a different church, and you moved location, you know, where you lived,
Right.
right?
Yeah. No, because my mom and dad were involved in the children's ministry at that church.
Okay.
Had an office of the church.
The one
Their-
out in Illinois? Or,
The one we're talking about where all this happened
Okay.
with you.
Oh, I didn't even remember that.
Yes, they had an office. And they had their own little like children's ministry team that would be under
Yeah.
them, and My mom would counsel sometimes in the church,
And that's the thing, think about that. There's so many people around you that have no clue what's happening to you right now, right? Or what's happened to you. So it's so hard to tell somebody who would have no clue, like to come with the news that I gave you last year, to tell you what I've been through. It was a lot for me to do that because it just seemed like out of nowhere, right? But all these years I'd been carrying it. And all these years I didn't think there was a point to sharing. And I want to go back to you and back to them to tell them that if you are currently being abused, you need to get help. And the thing that victims feel is that they'll never be believed. Or sometimes when you have to, let's say, victims of other crimes or sexual of nature, you go to court or whatever, you hear these stories all the time. And then the victim turns into the one that's being questioned
Right.
and being, and it's terrible.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people don't want to come forward. But I want to encourage you. Since I have done this in this past, it's been 5 weeks since I've talked to the public about it, but since last year, I really wish I would have come out so much sooner.
Me too.
Right? Mm-hmm. But like a psychologist was telling me, a friend of mine last week, she said, you couldn't, you weren't ready, you weren't healed enough. So I've gone through so much healing. But I think what I wanted to tell you is go to God, ask Him for help. And the question is, do you want to be well? That's the question, right? For all of us, whether it's not even abuse, it's anything in our lives, do we want to be well? And if you do, God will meet you right there. He will heal you, and He will help you to forgive those who harmed you. But sometimes when you have been victimized, sometimes it is necessary for people to be held accountable. Yeah. It just is. And someone told me the other day, they said, well, if I would have found out somebody that I know murdered somebody 40 years ago, and I found out now, I wouldn't be like, well, I mean, that was 40 years ago. Yeah. You'd be like, no, like we just found out you murdered somebody and you need to be held accountable. And it's kind of in the same light where what we did, God does forgive us. And if you've harmed somebody and you're repentant of that, God will forgive you. He will forgive you for our sins, right? And I just want to encourage you to get help. Talk to somebody. Go to God. God will meet you right where you are. And feel free to reach out to me. There's an email on my YouTube channel, but I'll tell you now, it's In Her Words, all lowercase, then .ihw. So that stands for In Her Words. So inherwords.ihw@gmail. Feel free to email me and let me know if you've gone through anything or if you need prayer. And that's what this podcast is going to be. I'm going to have guest speakers on here. I'm actually going to be interviewing a doctor. She's a psychiatrist, and she's also the founder of an organization that helps sex trafficking victims. She helps to rescue them, and it's going to be amazing. So I have that lined up, and I have other people I will be interviewing, and we're going to talk about a variety of topics. But I just wanted to thank you so much, Shannon, for being here, just talking to me today. I thought it'd be nice for you to hear from a friend of mine and talk about our lives together, and maybe we'll be able to have another show later at some point. Maybe I'll come to you.
There we go.
Yeah, set all this up. I don't know. I needed a lot of help today. What you guys don't see is that my son-in-law graciously came here and took, an hour and a half setting up the lighting. And I know it's not all perfect, and my glasses are shining these lights. This is not done in perfection, but I am raising money, and you can go to, on my YouTube channel, you'll see where there's a PayPal, I guess, where I'm trying to raise money so I can, one of these lights is his, one of these cameras is his, and these cords they're not mine. And I have a mobile studio, I guess. So I need to have my own equipment, and I also need to have someone help me edit, and I need to get a laptop, and I want to be able to reach as many people as I can. And I want to be able to fly people in, or me fly to them and go and interview. And there's just so many things I want to do, but it's going to take me raising some money. And the last thing I want to say is, thank you. Thank you for coming back to watch this podcast. Hang in there. I always say that there's so much more to come. And also subscribe. It's free. You just subscribe to my channel. And I need subscribers. That's going to help my podcast get out in front of other people, I guess. I'm still learning how this works, but I know it's important to subscribe. Leave some comments. Email me, and come back to see me next week. I'm going to try to send out or release a video every Wednesday. Is there anything you want to say before we? Anything at all? Put her on the spot here. Anything? I mean, I know we're kind of jumping all over the place because we have a time limit, but before we end, is there anything you want to say?
I'm just proud of you. I'm proud of you. Proud of you for sharing, for not being afraid to have a voice.
Thank you.
And I just wish I would have known sooner. I'm sure anybody that's ever had a friend or someone, the family member, like I wish, you just want to help. Like I wish I could repair everything in you, you know?
I know.
So it's like, that's all.
I know. And we said too, like, why did I move in with the pastor's family? I could have moved in with them.
Right.
They were two of my best friends, but I don't know. Like, I don't know why these things happen, and I didn't make these decisions. They
No.
were made for me, but you think about that, like, how things could have been different. But you know what? I'll say this, and we will end. If I had to go through what I went through in order to reach you or somebody else, it's hard to say it was worth it, you know, because it hurts. But it's worth it in a sense for me to sit and talk to you and tell you that God has a plan for you. God loves you. He wants you to be healed. He wants you to be whole. And some of that is just going to him first, forgiving, and getting the help that you need, right?
He makes beauty from ashes.
He does.
This is the beauty.
And this is the beauty. And sometimes it's not beauty. Sometimes, you know, you're going to see pain, and sometimes it's still going to be hard. But God is doing something amazing in my life and in this ministry. And he's called me to do this for a purpose. And I know it's to reach others, to tell you that he loves you. He's got a plan for you. And your pain can turn into part of your purpose. And that's what's happening with my story. So thank you so much. Come back and watch me next week. And please feel free to comment, email, but definitely subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Thanks again.